Hey folks, my name is Rabbi Mark Asher Goodman. I'm here to help you make your Seder awesome. So in a few 5-minute little videos, I'll give you a few tips and tricks to kind of help experience the Seder between you as the host and for your guests in such a way that it'll be a little bit more vibrant, give you a few new ideas, and help you to do some things that will really expand the experience in ways that you will really like. So my name again, Rabbi Mark Asher Goodman, Congregation Beth Shalom of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm here to help make your Seder awesome. Come on. All right, so the first thing to remember about a Passover Seder is that it is not just one thing or another thing. It's at least 4 things at the very minimum. The first thing to remember is that it is a space for making memories and for sharing memories. So that means that you want your Seder to be an open opportunity for dialogue and exchange. And it's a place to kind of bring a lot of fun and liveliness and life, but also to let people tell their stories and share their family stories from back in the day and from, things that really were memorable. I don't necessarily remember all the things from any one Haggadah reading from any one Seder of any one year or anything, but I can tell you funny things that people at my Passover Seder have said in the past years. And that's part of the experience. You're creating memories and you're letting people share their memories. A second thing that's really important to remember is that a Passover Seder needs to be a fine balance between tradition and innovation. You can do it the way you've always done it, but then the question might be entertained, how is your Seder going to be different if you do it the same way every year than it was in 2013 or 2003 or 1993, right? If you use the same Haggadah text, if you invite the same people and you read through it at the same pace and in the same manner, along with serving the same food, how are you going to be able to tell them apart other than the fact that everybody at the table is getting a little older and grayer? So you'll want to bring in some sort of innovation. Maybe it's a new Haggadah. Maybe it's some new activities to go with it. Maybe it's some props or some staged readings. Maybe you're taking pieces from one Haggadah or from one Seder insert and inserting it into there. And that's the methodology of how you construct the Passover Seder and the Haggadah is something we'll get to in a couple parts from now. The third thing is that remember that the Passover Seder is not just one thing. It is a staged reading, a musical, an educational space, and a meal, if not a few more additional things. It's a staged reading in that you can assign out the different parts of the reading. You can do voices, you can have props, you can have scenery, right? I've seen people who, had their kids make a Lego diagram of Moses parting the Red Sea in advance of the Passover Seder as something to bring to the table that is like, stagecraft. And I think that those kinds of ideas of understanding that there's theater to this might really make it a more vibrant space. Remember that the music is really important, and the music can be the traditional music or some more avant-garde fun music that you bring in. A lot of families have a lot of different songs that go with this, and the opportunity is always there to learn new music if you can't figure out how to do that. Thirdly, it's an educational space, right? This is an experiential educational journey that you're all going on. And whether that means it's more like a Greek symposia, as some of the scholars have suggested that the Seder was originally modeled on, meaning there are many questions that are posed that allow for adults to have high-minded intellectual dialogue throughout the meal, or whether this educational space is more about retelling and telling the story of the Israelites in their exodus from under the thumb of a bloodthirsty tyrant. You're doing some learning here, right? So remember that it's sort of a classroom. So envision it in that way. And fourth and finally, in this little subpiece is it's a meal, right? So remember that the problem of when do we eat and the problem of making sure that people getting fed, the brisket not drying out, and then all of the material being laid out at a nice interval is really critical and really important, right? Never forget that the food is part of the experience and the experience is part of the food, and to find a nice balance between those two things. The last thing I'll say as a piece of advice for Seder 101 is remember that it is an extension of the personalities at the table, right? You may have a way you want to do it, or you may want to do it the way your mom or your dad or your grandparents always did it. But remember that they didn't have the people at the table that you have. So anticipate what your audience is going to want. Maybe you have your grumpy Uncle Murray at the table who's always asking, when do we eat? Figure out a way to kind of feed into the things that he's interested in or the way that he wants to go. Maybe you have some very young people at the table. Maybe you have some friends of the family in town from Israel, and they need some sort of kind of entry point into an American Seder in a foreign language. Maybe you brought someone from work who they're not Jewish and they've never been to a Seder before. Or maybe there's an intermarried couple who at your table, they're going to feel a little, like this is a strange location for them because it's perhaps for one person or the other, the first Passover Seder they've ever been to. Anticipate what your guests are going to experience, what they're going to need, and most importantly, I think what they can bring to the table. Like, what are they like? What do they like? How can you involve them? And in part 2, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to involve your Passover Seder guests in creating this amazing experience.